Welcome to Papa's Workshop. Today I'm going to be putting the wasteboard onto the frame. Now there's many different ways to put a wasteboard on, but what I'm going to do is follow the instructions and build the wasteboard the way it shows from CNC for Newbies. So let's get started. Now the last thing I want to do before putting the wasteboard onto this frame is go around and just double check each of these screws and make sure that they are all snug. Because once the wasteboard's on, you're really not going to be able to get to it. So this is just a safety measure, if nothing else, just to make sure that it's done. And in doing this, I've actually already found one that was a little bit loose. See, that one's good and tight, and that one's good and tight. After checking the frame for all of the corner brackets, I actually found 3 screws that were a little bit loose. So this is why I like to be able to double check and make sure before I move on to the next step. Now this is a drawing from the CNC for Newbies for the wasteboard. Now I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this very fine print, but that actually says that this should be 940 millimeters and it should be 1000 millimeters right here. And we're going to verify that on the table before I actually cut it. Because this list, depending on the size of the machine, it lists all the different measurements out. The next thing that it shows over here is actually how to drill the holes. Now in looking at this detail, it shows from the corner of the wasteboard that the center of this circle that will accept the screw is going to be 10 millimeters going from each directions. So I'll mark the 10 centimeters to the center. The other thing that it shows that I was using a 0.20 hole that will go all the way through, and I also show this measurement right here at 0.63, and it's going to be at a depth of 0.3 inches. Now with the measurements given, I'm going to go ahead and confirm that, and I'm going to get this wasteboard cut. Okay, to double check the width of this frame, I can see that that is 940 millimeters, exactly dead on. We'll check it the other direction now. And measuring this way is right at 1000 millimeters. So that's going to be the measurements that we cut. At the table saw, I set my fence to exactly 940 millimeters. Now this, I want to be able to take my time, and I want this to be very accurate. Again, accuracy when building this CNC machine is very, very important because quite frankly, it makes it go so much easier if everything is done exactly according to the plan. Now again, I'm taking my time to make this cut. I'm watching the edge on the fence very carefully because I want to make sure that the material does not twist at all and cut out a square. Again, I want this board to be very, very square, and this is the only way to really be able to do it. Take your time, do it right the first time, and it just saves a lot of unnecessary work. With the first one cut, it's now time to set up the second cut. And this is going to be right at the 1000 millimeters. And I can't emphasize enough, accuracy is very, very important. And just take your time. There's no need to rush this part. Now I took just a moment to go ahead and refer back to the plans and mark the locations of each of the holes in the wasteboard. This didn't take but just a couple minutes to be able to do because I used the tape measure and I used a T-square to be able to line everything up. and get it marked. Now referring back to the plans, this hole needs to be 0.3 inches deep. Now I don't have a calipers that will actually do the depth very well, so I took a dowel rod and marked with a pencil the 0.3 inches deep. This is a good workaround. Again, you don't need fancy tools, sometimes just a little bit of creativity. Take your time when drilling the hole and check the depth. You really don't want to go too deep on this. Now the bit that I'm using is actually a 5/8 inch bit. That's very close to that 0.6 inches that it referred to on the plans. So you see when I'm getting very close to the proper depth, I'm taking a very small little increments to get just the depth that I want. Now you can see that I need just a little bit more depth to be able to go to obtain my 0.3 inches deep. This also gives me a good reference as far as the bit itself so that I can know exactly how far to go down. But there you go, you can see I'm exactly at the 0.3. Now of course you want to drill this larger hole first because it actually will give you a center point to be able to drill the other hole, the one that goes all the way through, that's 0.2 inches in diameter. Now one of the things that I'm doing is taking a little scrap piece of the MDF and clamping it underneath the wasteboard. The reason that I'm doing this is so that I do not have a blowout when I am drilling this all the way through. That would just give me one other thing to clean up before mounting this wasteboard, and it's really a step that I don't need to take. By putting on this extra piece of wood just temporarily, it will prevent that and give a very clean hole drilled all the way through without that blowout of the material. Now with the first hole done, I'm going to go ahead off camera and drill the remaining holes and prepare this wasteboard. Before I go ahead and can drill the rest of the holes, I do want to test this with the screw and the nut and to make sure that it does fit in properly. Now after all the holes are drilled, I'm going to put all of these screws and nuts in place. This will be an important step prior to the installation of the wasteboard onto the frame. I want to give one more reminder as far as the proper orientation of this nut. This is the part that actually screws into the screw. That rounded curved portion must remain underneath this for it to fit properly in the frame. Now the next thing we need to do is take out all of the screws because the wasteboard now is finished and it is ready to be able to go in. So I'm going to transfer these screws and nuts over to the wasteboard. The wasteboard is now completed. I have all of the holes drilled. I have the center holes drilled in it. And this is exactly what the plans show. Now one of the things that I like to do is just round over the edges so it doesn't chip over time. And I'm going to do that exactly the same way as I did the table. Now in the trim router, I have the 1/4 inch round over bit. And I'm just going to run that around the perimeter of this wasteboard, and that will smooth it up and it'll prevent this edge from chipping over time. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my little screw and my nut and I'm going to go ahead and put that onto the wasteboard. Now to be able to tighten this down in a moment, I'm going to be using the 4mm hex wrench to be able to do this. Well, I now have all the screws and all the nuts in place. Now it's not on the frame yet, but all the screws are in. So now it's time to just align these and drop them into the base frame. And once they're all in, then I'll just go ahead and tighten them up. As I move around the wasteboard, I just have to shift this board just a little bit and turn the screw to make sure that that aligns. And then it just drops in place. I can turn it and tighten it. Now I'm just loosely tightening it at this point. but you can see how the little nuts work underneath. Now you can see in the middle where my hand is now, it's up high, and as I rotate it, you'll see it just drop right in place. And then I can just tighten it down and continue moving around the entire wasteboard. Now that all of them are in place, all I gotta do is just tighten them up. And I'm gonna tighten them a little at a time. Make sure that everything is aligned, but it dropped in place really very easily. That looks great. Now I'm tightening these a little bit at a time to make sure that they catch. And every one of them have caught exactly the way they need to be in that track. Perfect. So this was actually very easy to drop in place. Being able to install the wasteboard was actually very easy and very straightforward. And it did not take a lot of time. The key to this is being very accurate when you cut the material on the table saw or whatever type of saw that you want to use. You can use the track saw to do this or anything else. The key to it is being very accurate. Same thing when you set up to do the screw holes. Make sure you measure them and mark them very accurately. And then from there it slips in very easily and basically just drops in place. Hi everyone, thank you for watching my video today. If you like the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell next to it so you'll be notified on the different videos that I upload. Also check out the videos over here to be able to stay up to date on the happenings in my shop. So again, thank you for watching my videos.